podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. You are listening to the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast with Justice Rajee. My guest today is a friend, a elder, a mentor, a person I'm proud to count as an advisor of sorts in my own corner, and someone who I have the pleasure of getting to do some great work in the community with. Retired Assistant Chief Kevin Modica. We're going to get into a range of topics over the course of the interview, as we always do. But I want to say thank you to him for coming on and adding his voice to my world and my platform. So with that, I'm going to let the rest speak for itself. Peace. I say peace.
Peace.
This is the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast, and I am joined by my fantastic guest, Mr. Kevin Modica. Or is it how? I want to give you all your props right on the front end now. So how do I say it? I call you Chief, but I don't want nobody.
You could call me Chief. You could call me Kevin. I retired as an Assistant Chief with the Portland Police Bureau after 31 years, and then previously worked at Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for 4.5, and worked for Federal Bureau of Prisons Treatment Center, formerly titled, but really just a halfway house. And then I worked civil commitments for Multnomah County, former trainer at the Police Academy, DPSST. And currently in my retirement, I sit on 3 boards for nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, and also the transition team for District Attorney Mike Schmidt, and the Governor's Task Force on Police Reform. And I'm in the focus bucket that deals with training.
Absolutely. So, we always start with giving some reverence. So I'm going to give, because you laid out a lot there, and I'm going to say thank you and give you some reverence for joining me, but also in my time being here, in the works that I've done, being someone that has embraced me. And as I like to say, gave me the signal that I was on the right path.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that.
Peace and blessings to you, Justice.
Right,
It's all good for the effort. And, Frederick Douglass said, agitate, the work is not yet finished. And so I look at it like this, you've got people like Warren Buffett and other individuals that are well up past their 80s. And they're not sitting back. They're still doing what they do and what they know how to do. And I feel to be true to the mission and the purpose of myself on this planet, my physical experience, that I continue building community and making a difference.
Absolutely. So anyone that you want to give some reverence, respect, or love to before we get into the discussion?
My queen, my wife, Lynn, and my children, all of them. I've got 5 between us, and every single one of them has continued to inspire me and teach me. And then, there's so many. I'd say from community, dearly departed Edna Robinson, Mother Robinson, just a stalwart in the community. Mother Joyce Harris, Queen Antoinette Edwards, Queen Avil Gordley, Barr family, Senator Gordley, Senator Carter, Senator Boyer. I mean, it's just this long legacy of learning from people who were doing the work. Ron Herndon, I blame Ron all the time for me even having the opportunity because he challenged me. It was right after the young man lost his life, Tony Lloyd Stevenson, and we were protesting then. And I asked a smart college kid type question, and he just challenged me out in public. We were right in front of City Hall, and he said, if you want to make changes, you got to change from the inside. So I took on the challenge, and here we are later. So many more. Many people in the profession, public safety profession. I was very inspired by Norm Monroe and Dr. Lee P. Brown, Dr. Gary Perlstein, people who really led the way for change, systemic change. We're talking about people from the late 60s all the way through.
Right.
Commissioner Charles Jordan.
Absolutely.
Just heavyweights.
All right. Awesome. So we'll get into it. Can you give me a standard or practice, something that you do and you try to do as you move through the world, as a man?
Well, you do many things moving through the world, from your daily task of hygiene to, when I get up, I'll take you from square one. When I get up, I sit up and I think for a minute and let my body adjust to the gravitational pull, and I give thanks because I'm happy every time I regain consciousness. I tell my wife I love her. And sorry that I woke her up. And, I have a spiritual practice. I smudge first thing in the morning, which, for those that don't know, it's the burning of sage and other herbs, and it's for cleansing. It sends me to that spot where I can center on what needs to be accomplished and what I need to pay attention to. Because a lot of times, you think you need to accomplish something, but there's usually one thing every cycle of the sun that you must pay attention to, and I just leave that to the one, get to my spot, my space, I'm cleansed, I'm clear, and, I get on with the day.
All right. Now, is there a story or something that's helped you get to where this is, this kind of bringing that kind of order to your life every day? Like, is there anything that particularly happened, or is it just something you had to accumulate? Like, how did you get there?
I think, part of it is just honoring all of who I am, right? So, the last name speaks a lot to me. I pronounce it differently, but it's an Italian surname. We've searched, my family and I, for as long as we've been aware of figuring out, was there an Italian slaveholder or was there intermarriage? Closest we can get is we knew the Italians came into New Orleans, and we also know that there was intermarriage or historical rape, and babies appeared, and it's the name that we have. But, my inspiration just comes from my people. It comes from everything, from life. I had a great life growing up, and within that great life, there were many circumstances and different environments, and I chose a path that I thought was my path to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up here playing in Portland State. I thought I was on my way to the league. Got my rude awakening. Had a couple tryouts. Played a little semi-professional football. And, started listening. Matter of fact, Norm Monroe was one of the people who just sat me down. Him and Olander Osborne and a couple other brothers that were working for the state police, and they would just check on me, man. I'd be in the park blocks, and they would say, Kevin, what are you doing? You going to class? You going to the library? What are you doing? And that stuck with me. And then, like every young man, you seek adventure. Plus, I had to care for my family.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up getting into the profession. But working in jail, like I was at Clackamas County, I was certain I didn't want to spend 31, 35 years in jail as a career, because every day those doors slam, you're in jail with the people in jail.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You're in there too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Indeed. So, relationships, broadly defined, what's something that you understand now that maybe you understood differently or did not understand as well as a younger man?
Size is not the measure of a person, right? It is truly your relationships and your ability to tap down your emotions. You want to tap down your emotions and use your intellect. Size is something that, when you're in the 8th grade, you're almost 6'4" and, 250 pounds. That's basically been your vehicle, right? Everyone loves you, yeah. Right? Oh, this is the next so-and-so. Oh, hey, let's go fight. Hey, let's go to this party. Oh, we got him with us. Let's go fight, Right. So, you get wiser. It's just not about that.
Yeah. A funny anecdote, a friend of mine shared about them going into a corner store one time, and he had he was friends about 5'11", not short necessarily, but his friend, the other friend, was like 6'3", 6'4", and little dude, unsolicited, said to them, "Oh, we got something for you, big fella," and it was like, wait a minute, we were just trying to get a soda pop.
Right.
Wasn't nobody coming to start no drama, but
right.
I guess a familiar refrain, even friends of mine, I'd say, you go to the gym and there's folks working out or something, and there's always a guy that's, in real good shape, and kind of making faces at people, and I always think like, hey man, all the muscles ain't gonna save you, man.
Right.
Right. I hope you can actually fight with the way you looking at people, but
there's always somebody bigger and badder.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you really figure out, hey, being a peacemaker, right? Being someone who seeks peace and wants to give grace to people gets you so much further along, right? So much further along. Because at the end of the day, if you just weaponize yourself, you'd just be two beat-up people at the end. And if you use actual physical things as weapons, you could seriously hurt or kill one another. And, we talked a little bit about, spirituality and faith. I don't believe that humans are wired to destroy one another. I don't feel that that's a natural thing. It's an unnatural thing. And that's one seriously big lesson.
And so you grew up between Seattle?
I grew up in the CD. So
okay.
Both my parents migrated from the South. My mother from Texas, my father from Louisiana, Baton Rouge, known as Scotlandville. And they ended up here in the Pacific Northwest. And, like all young men, I wanted to leave home. So I came 179 miles away from home, ended up in Portland.
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here, but, close enough. I could drive home.
Right, you can be there. All right. I want to come back to that in a second as we move through. So at this point in your life, what's just really important to you right now?
My children and my grandchildren. I'm digging the grandchildren so much because we see our children in them. And so, not unlike any other parent, I think, you want so much more and better for them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to be oppressed by the same things, right? I know that's what my parents said, and I know what their parents said to them. I was fortunate enough to know my grandparents, and so in that importance, this time right now, this awakening of our country, the movement, the demand, it's important to me to really push for this work. I don't know as if we'll all ever be done, but I certainly do not want my grandchildren, my grandsons, I have 2 of them, and I have 2 granddaughters. I do not want them oppressed because of the color of their skin, the width of their nose, the thickness of their lips, the type of hair they have. I do not want that for them. I don't want them to go through the things that we've gone through to this point, right? It's traumatizing.
Yeah.
And it's just extra work you have to do.
Yeah. It's an extra, it's like extra rules and
Yes.
and checks, things
Yes.
to check before you leave the house. Like, do I got my keys, house keys, car? Oh, do I also do I have my dignity?
Yep.
Do I have enough intestinal fortitude to get through the day without slapping somebody?
Absolutely.
Where am I at?
Do I have my integrity? Do I know who I really am? Am I going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe? Am I going to let somebody else define me? Just how will I react if somebody calls me nigga, or wants to touch my hair, or spits at me, or challenges me to act differently than how I'm raised at home so that I fit in, or someone telling me that I'm not smart enough to accomplish something, right? It almost sounds ludicrous, right? I think generally in society, when you start breaking it down to people, and that's why these conversations are important. Older person told me some time ago, they said, everyone has a lynch story, right? Everyone has a lynching story. So, when we talk, if we really break it down and we're comfortable with people, it's not for you to feel sorry, it's for you to be aware. It's just like, so just know we go through all of this shit, excuse my language,
Feel free.
every day, all day. I have to encounter whether or not that's the reason for things that may occur or I may encounter. And once I filter and get through all of that, I get to determine whether or not my day has been successful. Was I able to get my task done? Was I good to other people? Did I love my family today? Or is this why I'm grumpy when I got home, didn't want to talk to anybody?
Right.
Or, why I don't have friends anymore because I just don't like anybody anymore, I mean, this is serious stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be white, but I know what it's like to be black. It doesn't seem like it's the same thing.
Yeah. No, not at all. So when you brought up the grandkids and the arc, you know what I mean, of being a parent. 'Cause I got 2 teenagers, one who finished high school, so I'm at the as I like to say, the first gate.
Oh yes.
Of like, hey man, I got you here.
Yes.
Now you can, you got a lot more autonomy now with what's
Right.
about to happen with you.
Right.
And I got one that's starting high school, but you got you on the other side, you got some grandbabies. So, is there anything that sticks out to you right now with like being a grandparent that you maybe didn't expect or you surprised you once you got here?
The feeling that I would have from the unrestricted love, right? The grandchildren love you without any restriction. It is just incredible. And that you can teach them things, right? You know, then people say, oh, the grandparents' job is to spoil them. It's like, no, you can teach them. I was with my grandson yesterday, and we just took a walk down the block, and, so inquisitive, right? And you know your colors, and to listen to Papa. Okay, we're crossing the street. Let's look left. Let's look right. And to actually watch his little body perform left and right. And look up. Okay, we're listening. Do you hear any cars? Okay, let's cross. And just that humanization, right? The purity of these new souls. Their spirits having a physical experience, right? And the maturity of my children, their parents. I'm so proud, so very proud. Not surprised, but just so very proud. They're great parents.
Yeah, that's dope, man. I think, the feedback I get from my mother and from I have one grandparent still with us, and is always the it's a mix of like attaboy, like good job, but also like, oh man, look at the babies over there. And I'd be like, oh man, you be pumping her head up. He got some more work to do. You know what I'm saying? But they're like, whatever, that's my grandbaby.
Right.
I don't care, but okay, what you talking about?
Right.
You spoke of having time with your grandparents, and I want to ask you this because I was talking to interview earlier this year. Generationally, some of us, like folks my age, we don't have the experience of going back and forth between sort of the North and the South,
right?
In the way that it was, when you were a young man.
Oh no!
Right? Is there anything that you recall? Because your grandparents, were they up here or were they back down in?
No, man. So my grandpa Ernest, who was my father's father, and I believe there were a total of 12 children. And out of those 12, there's only one left, my dear Aunt Pearlie. I recall the vehicle trips, right? So every other year, we'd either go to Texas or we'd go to Louisiana. And then one year, we did the double trip, right? But we'd load up the Pontiac. There'd be boxes of sandwiches and cold fried chicken and cake and, and Daddy and Mama and my sister and I. We have a brother, but he came along much later. We'd be rolling. And Daddy didn't like to stop. If we did stop at a motel, what I knew is that there seemed to be tension. I didn't really know what the interaction was at the desk, but I just always knew there was tension. But there was one time, and I had a pretty active metabolism, I had to use the restroom. My daddy pulled into a gas station, and the man was really harsh to my father, and I watched my father drop his eyes and speak in a way that I had never seen before, almost begging the man to let him, my father, take his son to the bathroom. It was a white man, And I remember he said, over there. And he's pointing. Well, I'd never been into a damn outhouse before. And I mean, it was just as raggedy and smelly as you could imagine. No toilet paper. My daddy had to use his pocket handkerchief to help me clean. And we had to wash our hands in the tire dunk. That stuck with me. As well as I do remember my father saying, no, I'm not going to stop and just drive all night, And I was just like, wow. But once we got there, my grandpa Ernest loved me. He didn't really know me. I mean, we lived way up in Seattle, Washington, they down there. And, America, I will admit this, the accommodations were tight. So I had to bunk in with Papa. And I wet the bed. And Papa did not yell at me, didn't ridicule me and nothing. He said, oh, boy. He said, well, we just won't drink as much Kool-Aid tomorrow. But it was country, man. There were mules and chickens and pigs and big anthills that stepped in a fire ant hill. And,
you did it all.
And then in Texas, it's totally the difference, right? Texas, there was Nanny, my mother's mother, and we would stay at her house, small little house, little shotgun house, and then as times changed, we'd like be at a motel, but there was like the town of Breckenridge, and half the people that lived there were the relatives, so. But first time I ever really swam in a river, or seen a snake, that kind of stuff. But my grandfather Ernest passed away early in my life, but my nanny, Grandma McCurry, she lived to be 94 years old. My parents brought her up, and she stayed with us in Seattle for her last, I think, maybe 10 years of life, And she always sewed for us. Okay. She's a seamstress by profession.
Okay.
And so whenever she would come, everybody got something sewn. And I kept my denim jacket, this is the 70s, with the big butterfly collar and the tie. Bro, I kept that thing until I damn near graduated from college, It was just special.
Yeah. I can imagine. So, I remember similar to the story you shared about your father, my mother relaying to me, like, on a trip down to North Carolina from New Jersey, like, seeing her father, my grandfather, on that side, sort of a lot, like, having to talking to a white man in a way she never saw him let anybody talk to him, back home in New Jersey and in Trenton.
Right.
And I like to with history in our community and relation, what we've experienced, I like to try to get people to, to move it out of this sort of like, well, what we got thing. Where we're like, well, now it's like this, but it ain't really that much different. I'm like, I hear what you're trying to say, man, but
there's differences.
Like, if you talk to your peoples about how they felt day to day, because there's a lot of, it's a lot of stuff, and it's stuff that, as a younger man, you may not understand, like a elder who's proud in a certain kind of way about certain stuff.
Right.
And I've learned that sometimes some of that is due to how you're trying to maintain your respect and everything else in a world that in a much more hostile way is day to day challenging you about about that. So I know them stories are there. Oh, brother. And I can't imagine the drive. I don't know how long the drive is from here.
It's 3 days.
Yes.
It's 3 days if they got their foot on the gas, right?
Yeah.
But gas was like 16 cents a gallon. But, I will say this, that whole different way, right, to see my father's square shoulders, right, droop, right, to see him lower his head and his eyes, and to speak in a low tone with no assertiveness. Man, I will never forget that, right?
Absolutely.
And, it's not that today's current 21st century issues aren't as important, but I truly feel like you got to remember that. You got to remember that. Just like, people are talking about Bloody Sunday. You got to remember that, right? As we move forward, remember that. I don't mind being called an old head. I mean, being an old head is what it is. Thank the Creator. I thank the one to be an old head. But we definitely want to share what we know and support the next ones up. But we're not gonna forget, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. Is like, things are important in today's context, but there's also another set of lenses to put on.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, thank you, Chief. I appreciate you taking us down there. So, at this point, I want to open this up a little bit. Okay.
And you like a therapist?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because there's a couple, things I want us to touch on that are more, you have a wealth of experience, as a retired officer.
Certainly.
And as a community member, and I think a unique experience with this city, you know what I'm saying, in Northeast Portland. And the history, and I think because you grew up in the CD and then you were an adult, here you got a real special understanding of Black Northwestism.
Yes,
I'll call it maybe
Pacific Northwestism.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it Black Pacific North. We come with an acronym.
Oh, all right.
What is somebody who not from here, not from this part of the country, especially someone that's Black that's not from this part of the country, but maybe anybody. What's something that they should understand about growing up and living in this part of the country?
Well,
your estimation,
I'd have to say that we had more proxemic contact with Caucasians. The other side of it is there's a whole lot of that whole melting pot thing, right? I mean, as I think about it, I do believe we grew up privileged, but provided that privilege by the hustle. All of my partners I grew up with, our parents, our daddies hustled. Mom held down the house. And we got old enough, moms always went to work, but that exposure, right? So there's a particular amount of empowerment that came through that, right? I say maybe a bit of a myopic experience because you're like in a little bubble.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, well, I get along with Johnny, I get along with Susie and Sally. I don't go to their house a lot, but, we all go to church together. We go to school together. This fly is killing me. So...
You're gonna have to hit him with the buzzer.
I'm gonna have to hit him with the
hit him with the zip zap.
Thing. But it's a unique existence, right? Because then when you become an adult, that'll be good for the listening audience. Yeah. I live in the hood. We got flies. When you become an adult, then you become aware of the sameness of what it was like for my folks, right? I mean, it's like that whole corporate, hyper-aggressive, now they determine as micro-aggressive, but just all that stuff that goes with, yeah, but I'm still the only one, right? I'm still the only one. I mean, you're looking around for your brother and your sister, and it's like, every 20 white people, then there's like 2 or 3 black people, right? Whether it's school, whether it's, employment, even relationship-wise, right? I mean, I got no problem. Love is love. It is what it is. But what I did notice is people who were not from here really didn't understand if you were dating someone out of your ethnic group. It was like you got the stank face, man. It was just like this, But he do that? It's like, hey, we're all cool. But I think the other thing about being in the Pacific Northwest is in the cities, highly Democratic. In the rural areas, highly Republican. There's more rural area than urban area. And, I went from Seattle in the CD to Yakima, Washington, right? Reservation, right? And then from the reservation, short stop in Montana, and then ended up here in Portland, right? And so it's like, man, 45 minutes outside of Portland.
Yeah.
If you look like us, it's a rough go.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely some.
It's
welcome to town.
Yeah, welcome to town. And when you leave,
what brings you
here? Yeah, and when you're leaving,
you played in the state of that.
Yeah, really, and so you carry these artifacts with you. I'm educated. I went to this school. I went to that school. This is my profession. Really didn't seem to matter. As I got older, right? I mean, you're in the skin you're in, and that clearly the subtleties of discrimination and racism here are much different than in the South, and I think in the Southeast, I don't know if I got to your question or not, but.
Oh, you got to the question.
Okay.
So, and I asked that because I think, I think it's been said, and I can't remember, and I'd like to get the quote, give credit if I can remember, but there are as many ways to be black as there are black people.
Yes.
And the external question I get about up here is, first is always, are there black people there, which I always have to say yes. And then the second thing is like, well, just like what's, the at times the lack of imagination sometimes in our community around like how other ways other people are living, is it's just a fascinating phenomenon. Now, I grew up in New Jersey, which maybe because where I grew up, it gives you a little bit of... I
know New Jersey, briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Blackwood, Clemington, and, we had this conversation about Camden. It's like, look, if you ain't from there, you don't need to be up in there.
Yeah, you need to have a plan, like what you it's not a passing through, let me stop in this spot to have a beer
kind
brother, of town necessarily.
I used to hang out in Philly tough, man, and I had a good friend, and they were in Blackwood, Clemington, and then, we'd have to go through Camden, and it was just like, red lights. Ain't nobody stopping for a red light, right? That was the first thing that was an indicator is like, don't stop, right? And you don't have to worry about the street lights because they're all busted out, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like when the sun goes down, it's just dark.
Yeah, you need to have a clarity of vision, as I like to say. You know what I mean?
Not putting it down, but I'm just saying it's
the thing, and I think it's something that a lot of folks could connect to. Sometimes our communities, due to the situation we've been in and the circumstances around us, there's things that go on. There's industries that have set up, and most of those industries are not kind to looky-loos and passerbys, and everybody is a potential threat. So therefore, if you just breezing through here and you got out-of-state plates or you got a funny haircut, don't look like you from around here.
You got your rental car.
People got questions. You know what I mean? Like I told you when I first came up here, I scoped, I went and did research, figure out where where the world, the universe, the internet said that black people was at. And I said, all right. They said in Northeast, this corner right over there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to pull up. And I'm just, I've got enough. I know how to go in.
Right.
And, I'm going to go in the regular business hours. I ain't coming in at 9:30.
Right.
Talking about what's cracking up here. What you mean what's cracking? Who are you?
I was going to say, what's happening? What do you want to happen, brother?
Right. Like, I'm coming through. I'm trying to do commerce. You know what I mean? I'm going to see if I can buy a final call from the brothers or go to I went to Reflections when it was open. I'm going to get a coffee and get a book.
Gloria McMurdy.
Yeah.
That was such a treasure.
Yeah.
That was such a treasure. That and Mother Dear's.
I don't think I've.
Oh man, Mother Dear's, the best cafe deli, hands down, and her sweet potato tarts, her sweet potato pies, her soups, all vegetarian soups, just wonderful, man. As a matter of fact, I think Zupans used to carry her craft for a long time, until she stopped baking. And
that's dope.
I think Brother Torrey Campbell is related to Mother Dear, Mother Hardy. I think she's a Hardy.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, man, those two spots.
Hey, so you come into, because I think it's something that, it's turned into this other thing external from our community, but there's a thing about respect if you coming into somebody else's town, right? Because this is your town.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna come to your town and act all kind of any old kind of way,
right?
Because you live here and I don't live here, and we know that there's an attracting power to the new black person when there's already like, oh, he from somewhere else, like
yeah, it was even like that between what we used to call the 206 versus the 503, right? We come down here from Seattle, man, and it was like, the newest toy on the shelf. And so some people was friendly and some people were not. But, I say this, no family so that your family can hook you up with someone to know to be your pathfinder, right? And because both communities were so compressed, right? You from the East Coast, bruh. So when did you ever experience a black community compressed into like 50 blocks, right? And that was it. Like you go outside the 50 blocks, is like that's it.
That's all the black people.
That's all the black people, right?
Yeah,
so that dynamic made it a bit different, almost like a small town, because so many people are family to one another. I married my wife, and I became instant relative to a whole bunch of people. People I knew and so forth, but didn't know we were related.
Know it was like that. Yeah, and I think that is a phenomenon that, even being from the Northeast, especially, right? Where I know about the black people in the towns you spoke of in New Jersey, but there's other people even in Philly who are like, where they got black people? I'm like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of black people, and actually, we all over the place.
Yes,
in different spots.
Yes,
right? Boom, you pop in, you pop out.
Yes.
So it's hard to imagine like if you go 200 miles east of Portland, staying on this side of the river. There's no close next town with like half as many black people. It's a hard concept, I think, to grasp.
Yeah. Because
especially if you live like in the Northeast or even the Midwest. So if you live in Detroit, Gary, Chicago, even Kalamazoo and the other side, like you have at least a vision of there's a lot of people over there and it's only 2 hours away or whatever, right? But in the Northwest, it's like there's 2 spots.
There's 2 spots, right? Seattle, Tacoma, Portland. Maybe the college towns when college is in session. And after that, you might as well just be a traveler, And it's interesting, you said, 200 miles east. We've got our indigenous brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
But other than that, you definitely going to get the... Hey, stranger.
New in town.
You're new in town. Oh, we're out of gas. Well, I just need regular. We're out of that.
And, I tell you, since in the time I've been here, I've never had no weirdness, but I know, today is not the past as it pertains to the Northwest.
No, I think some people are a little bit more sophisticated, but you get the vibe, right? I mean, you go someplace, even at the coast, Lincoln City, Cannon Beach, I mean, you go places and you know that your skin bag isn't one that comes through the doors often, right? So you deal with looks and doubts and don't know about service. I'm not going to indict anybody, right? But, it's kind of a different thing. I'll tell you what's interesting. One of the most shocking things is after the Mulligan Sarah murder and then Tom Metzger trial, and we had a family event to attend in all places, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Wow.
Luckily, we were at the resort, but I had never been so mortified, actually frightened. I have my whole family in the car, and, we had as much protection as we had, but it was like we had code words and plans for if when we crossed over through Spokane, it didn't go well, how we were going to do it, to include me jumping out the car and my wife just taking off.
Wow.
Right? And I'll never forget, we arrived at the resort, and the general manager of the resort, had a big reception and stuff. And it's like, and we want to make sure that you that are attending know that you are welcome here. And I mean everyone. And I'm like looking at this cat and I'm like, dude, you could have done without saying any of that, right? We didn't take any of the excursions off the resort. The resort, Lake Coeur d'Alene, beautiful place, but
yeah, I've heard it's quite beautiful.
But totally unsafe. Matter of fact, Idaho itself, just the thought of Idaho, is frightening, right? Even though I've been told, hey, Boise's cool. There's an Air Force base and a college there, and it's kind of like the Portlandia of that part of our country in the Pacific Northwest, but when you think about, when you were talking about the grandchildren, I do not want them to fear for their safety so they do not partake in activities that could enrich their lives, right? I don't want them to not enjoy the out of doors. I don't want them to not want to go hiking and, all of the things that are in the places where we're not.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want them to have to deal with that. And so that's truly a driver. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm saying that globally.
Yeah.
But it's a hell of a thing. You think about, you have immigrants come to our town that they may be from a European country, right? Mm-hmm. And they learn the N-word and how to treat us horribly as fast as they learn the language. And that just trips me out.
Yeah.
I'm like, you just spent time in a refugee camp and you're fleeing some type of government that's oppressive, and then you come here and learn how to oppress those that are being oppressed here.
It's almost as somebody gave you a handbook. Hey, so when you get here, you know.
Yeah.
Here's the basics.
Hey, when you see that, oh man, that's what you say.
Yeah, that's it. Don't worry about that. I'll put you in the position.
Yeah, it is absolutely just an extraordinarily numbing thing, and I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, it's. I like to think of it, analogy I've been having, it's sort of like it's old software for how to run things, right? And the world, the world hasn't given up everything about that software just yet. But there's a lot of pieces of it that are no longer, they're just not that useful anymore, but it still lingers.
The mainframe is still running things.
It still had that, what they say, it got a Unix in the back.
Yep.
Like it still got the legacy software that deep.
Yes.
deep in there.
Yes, Fortran and COBOL.
And they're trying to build this innovation, build this other stuff on top. You know what I'm saying? So you don't got to, but at some point you got to just build all new servers and systems and new cables,
new hardware, new software.
You know what I mean? You say, we're just gonna take that old model. We're just gonna take that whole thing right up out of there.
Yeah.
And,
that's a great analogy.
I think for me is a part of us having to be a part of that. What's the new hardware going to be? You know what I'm saying? We got to be involved, and then things can be different. And so I want to pivot because one thing I want to make sure we talk about before I get you all. I want to keep you all night. Is the me and you have been doing some work, and we'll continue to be doing work around public policy as it relates to public safety, peace, police. Law enforcement. You spoke to some of the pieces that you're on in the 21st Century Policing Report. I wanted to get a little bit of a snippet from you, and you don't got to go long on each of them, but the pillars.
Well, there's 116 pages in the original piece.
Yeah.
You want me to start with the contents or the appendix?
Well, what I'm going to say is, all us grown folks, I'm going to put the PDF on the internet. They need to read the whole report.
Oh, but absolutely.
All I really want to do is just get a bite on each of the 6 pillars. Because I think that is, if you get a minute, 2 minutes,
a little
taste.
Bite.
Just a little taste. You know what I mean?
Taste.
So we make sure we can give people we give them a place to start as we, keep generating this conversation and making sure people realize there's been great work done that people can build on to make things different.
Yes.
It doesn't. So, because we like to reinvent the wheel every time. That's actually a part of the old software is, hey, let's have a new study every 10 years when things blow up and act like we didn't have the other study that told us the same thing. So, so I wonder if you could give me, take me into the first pillar.
Well, a little backstory. I'm sure most people remember the tragedy in Ferguson, Missouri. And post-Ferguson, Missouri, the then president, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, convened thought leaders in public safety. And between his convening and the professional organization IACP and the Department of Justice, at the time I think Her Honor Madam Loretta Lynch was running Department of Justice, and then I think before that Eric Holder. But in any event, the convening occurred, the thought leaders got together and produced a white paper called 21st Century Policing, right? And it's just really embodying the best of theory and practice so that our profession could mature and grow towards equity and procedural justice and restorative justice. But so like the first pillar is building trust and legitimacy. And so, in my opinion, you've got to have that whether you're in policing or whether you're in a business with customers or whether you're a neighbor, right? You've got to have trust and legitimacy between yourself and those that you interact with. The lack of that, well, it's been seen, right? I mean, you have exorbitant numbers of disparate stops, right? Racial and ethnic disparity in stops, in searches. And we're talking nationally, and also, some of this hits home at Oregon, and that people of color have no trust of public safety, right? They're either getting beefs that are not truthful, or they're overcharged, or, they're heavily surveilled, or, and I don't mean to say they, I really say we when I talk about this in other circumstances because, out of uniform, quite frankly, and most officers will tell you this, I'm just another black man or woman behind the wheel of a car or walking down the street or walking into an elevator. So without trust and legitimacy, you cannot hope to have collaborative interaction with the communities that you police, right? And so I generally think that there's a community of interest, which is like the global community, right? Yes, you should have trust and legitimacy with everyone. It seems, though, historically, there's less trust and legitimacy in communities where the majority of the population are non-white, right? And so then there's the geographic community, and that's what I'm talking about. If in the geographic community, the expectation is based on, whereas coaches say, you're teaching me how to treat you, right? So the police are teaching the populations how to treat them, which is like, we don't like you because the way you treat us, right? And even when police organizations say, no, it's the other way around, it's like, no, it can't possibly be that, right? You can't possibly say that because my son or nephew was wearing the latest clothing styles and driving what would be a regular sedan, but now it's got big wheels and big music and straight pipes on it, that they are a suspect in anything.
Right.
They're just a young person living life, right? Or that a grown man is just living life, right? And so there's that breakdown, right? So you're not going to get cooperation. You're not going to get information that can help. You're not going to get the support at a time of crisis, because without trust and legitimacy, you have no relationship, right? The time of crisis is not to say, hey, let's have a relationship, right?
Hey, I know that last time you seen me, I was sweating you about the rear light or something ridiculous that doesn't really matter.
Right.
But, right now we got this real serious thing, and I need you to give me all of the trust.
Yes, give me all the trust.
Let me ride you to the station. Let me pick this person. Tell me where this person is at so I can talk to him.
Yes, I know I took you to jail for a suspended license because you had several $1,000s in FTA charges because you were choosing to go to work or take care of the children or take care of a elder in your family, or maybe you had some other presenting issues that just really prevented you from making that schedule, right? And so now I know you got a warrant. If we can talk, I'll just, maybe I won't put you in jail for that warrant today. Right? Trust and legitimacy. And I know some of my peers in the profession, it is anathema to them when I talk about the police and the community and what I know about policing and what I believe about how things are for people of color when they interact with the police. Now, generally speaking, as a 60-plus-some-year-old man, I worry, but I'm not as worried, right? But for someone younger or someone that doesn't have the same supportive factors in life, my reality about that is not their reality.
Yeah.
Cool.
Appreciate you. Yeah, I think... I'll say this is something, just generally, like, if you have trust, it automatically.
Yes.
And if you don't have trust, it's going to take a minute before we can move forward. And you got to work on that before you can really work on anything else.
Yes.
Cool. So the second pillar is policy and oversight. And I think, I think most people could figure that one out, but what would you say just briefly, like what that means?
Because I'm a policy geek, I love this one particularly because great policy informs practice, right? So if you have great policy, you'll have great practice and great practitioners. If the policy is weak, you have weak practice and practitioners that aren't proficient. And you must always check what you expect, right? So you've got to use as much as you can to measure the effectiveness of the practice based on the policy. And if it's not correct, you must change, right? And I say that speaks volumes to most agencies. You'll find that there's policies that not only are outdated, just don't make sense anymore. And, but there are also policies that were never enacted that might make a lot of sense, right? For some jurisdictions, it might make a lot of sense for people employed as public safety officers to live in the community, right, within the city limits. Policy and practice. It may be that you have an agency where you discourage mere conversational stops, right? I mean, the most important thing to an American is their liberty, right? The freedom to do and move freely, to go and come as they please. So if you have a practice based on a policy that really just seeks to extract, right? It's old cookbook method, right? Oh, it's a mere conversation. Hey, hi there, Justice. How you doing today?
Same way I was yesterday.
Hey, my name's Officer so-and-so. And what was your name? Huh? Where are you going? Oh, hey, no, we're just having a conversation. This is a high vice area here, and there's a lot of people that are up to really nefarious things. I mean, you seem like a nice fellow. I can't imagine that you'd be involved in any of that, would you? Are you? You wouldn't have any paraphernalia in your pockets that would suggest that you're involved in that. Mind if I check? Well, it sounds corny. I will tell you, effective practice to extract and just throw a heavy, wet blanket, right, on a community. Well, you think you're solving the problem, right? Well, you may stop one individual, but there's 150 more that are going to go to the same house or walk to the same corner, right? I mean, so you've got to be wise enough, I think, as you craft your policy or review your policies to see what is working, what is not, what's legal, what's not legal. I mean, most researchers and legal eagles will still tell you that there's a bit of cloudiness in the water between probable cause and reasonable suspicion, right? Even though the laws are written, it's like you reasonably suspect, or you had probable cause to believe. Well, why do you believe that? Could it be because you're socialized to believe that everyone that looks that way and walks that way and talks that way is probably up to no good, right? So I think policy and oversight, and I think it's also a door that opens for the community because you can involve the communities of interest and the geographic community in crafting your policies, right? And you've got to do more than just say, hey, our new policy's online. Please check it out and write us a message, right? I mean, okay, so...
Please go read that webpage.
Yeah, take the Survey Monkey. I mean, it's got to be more robust than that, with meaning. Yeah. With meaning.
Indeed. And I think the oversight piece, just that, that there is actually the ability to evaluate, to ask questions, to investigate, to go,
Yes.
Can we step back and take a look at it?
So, that's real big here in Portland. I know Commissioner Hardesty has a ballot measure that's moving forward to rebuild the oversight mechanism for the city of Portland. I'm also aware that the city auditor has their own thoughts on what that should be like. Currently, we have IPR, which is Independent Police Review, but they don't have subpoena power. And they really don't have the ability to dispense discipline, right? So oversight. I mean, I think that you can provide great oversight on a cursory level, or you can provide oversight on a robust level that really is committed, it's thorough, it's forward-facing, it's outward-facing to the community, right? Not inward-facing to protect the participants in law enforcement.
Indeed. So, let's see. So, technology and social media, my understanding is that pillar is more about sort of, I mean, I guess right there on the face of it, how you engage in those spaces, especially the way I always think about with social media these days, how much information people get and that they use as actionable.
Absolutely.
Based on social media. But also there's still I think a huge gap and lack of sophistication with that, and potential for the same biases that will cause maybe me or you to be stopped, especially depending on what car we're driving, versus other people.
So, I do know that when the roundtables were first convening, the conversations about having body cameras was real intense. And in some instances, I think that has been rethought because there's a lot of issues, right? There are constitutional issues with the images. Who's the keeper of the images? How long are the images going to be kept? What if the person doesn't want their image taken? What if there are compromising circumstances? So I think that part of the technological conversation has ended up at a stalemate, right? Now, the other uses of technology, there used to be, in legal terms for the profession, that if the technology was more sophisticated than what you could buy at Kmart, you had to go get a warrant, right? The problem now is that Kmart has a lot of technology, right? So, are you using the technology to support crime prevention and reduction, like ShotSpotter? I like ShotSpotter. I like ShotSpotter combined with CCTV. The challenge is the CCTV is always rolling, right? So again, who keeps the images, right? And the cost. And all of this, by the way, is old military R&D. So if you're going to now prohibit the usage of military hardware, that would include technology as well, right? So it's a conundrum. But there are good things to use technology for DNA research, so that you catch perpetrators that have gone free for decades, for actually helping solve or intervene in criminal activity that is ultimately deadly and dangerous for the communities, right? Doesn't mean helicopters, right? But doesn't mean drones,
right?
I actually think that technology is going to play a role in reducing the use of firearms to enforce the law. But the challenge is, what will that technology ultimately do to the human that it's used on, right? So you've got an ethical question. I still believe there's got to be a way to utilize technology to really slow things down and yet still leave public safety officers safe and the public safe. Social media is for storytelling. It's for interaction. I know there's a certain segment of the society, even us old heads, that use that technology for those purposes, but not all the time.
Yeah.
Right? But we also know that there's a large percentage of the population that is 100% the way that they communicate and coordinate their day, right? So, and on the community side, I think use the technology. Have that app that pulls up the questions that you might ask if you happen to be stopped, right? Or that you can plug in an officer's badge number, right? Or a personal ID number, and you know who that officer is.
Right. Confirm
that
they're actually a police officer and not somebody impersonating.
Yes.
Or if something goes wrong, if they're not coming forward with information they should be providing, you can go, wait a minute, I know exactly who you are.
Right.
You right here.
That you could pull up information about your location and the nearest supervisor is going to get pinged, right? I mean, that's a simple thing, right? Or that there's a shared database of officers who have use of force complaints that are exorbitant or have been involved in deadly physical force incidents. Now, again, anathema to my peers that I shared time with in the profession, but as a citizen, I've got to say, sounds reasonable to me, right? And this is the thing, trust and legitimacy. If I know I have options to verify what you're doing is right, or to verify that what you're doing is wrong, I think those options should be available. It used to be really the thought was that most people that we dealt with had no idea what the laws of the state or the city were, right? And so I think that, just like we used to get telephone books, right? Even though big print media is out of style, I suggest every home have a print copy of the ORS and the city code book. And if you don't like paper, you can get them online. I think they should just be pushed out, right? So
Right. You can at least it's a total it's intentional that we're not pushed to learn these things.
Correct.
Or to access them.
Correct.
Right? And it's also then it becomes the sort of the stigmatizing joke of like the jailhouse lawyer or your cousin that did some time, or you, if it's you, but that relative, they come back and they know all the laws now.
Yes.
Right. And then but part of that for them was ability to take control of a situation where they didn't have any control. So wait a minute, if I know all the rules, then I can speak your language now when you pull up on me if I'm you think I'm doing this. Now I might be doing something.
I think it's as important as knowing your zip code, at least knowing where to go get the information. I mean, I just believe that is a must, right? If you've got to take a driving test and you have the capacity to learn how to drive correctly, then you should have the capacity to at least access the information that are in those documents. It's very important.
Absolutely. Cool. Let's bang out these last two because I don't want to. Officer training and education. Now, can you touch on this one? Because, most folks, when the concept of training comes up, because that concept has been sort of used at a time, a way to kick stuff down. We got to do some different training. And then, but still matters that people are trained and how they're trained and then what they're accessing. Can you speak to like the importance of that pillar? Like what's something in there that folks may...
Well, I think you flip the paradigm. In most training academies, they talk about hard skills versus soft skills. And the soft skills have always been those things that give you the ability to relate to other humans, right? As opposed to the hard skills being driving and shooting and defensive tactics and that type of thing. I think you flip the paradigm because teaching someone how to manipulate a machine or an object, it can be done. It's done by repetition. But the skills of relating to human beings is a skill that must be learned experientially.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the history of your jurisdiction, the bad and the good history, is critically important. I think that involving the community, right, of interest in your training is vitally important. You know, I'd love it to see community members chosen as mentors for newer officers coming on, you know, that extends beyond their probationary period, right? Right now, probationary period is 18 months, a year and a half. You know, the academy, I think, is 16 weeks, which with the amount of hours, it's not quite 700 hours, I don't believe, which is lower on the national standards for training. I think training should be decentralized. Yes, there's a reason to have some centralized training because you really have to train to the lowest common denominator because there's so many agencies that have to be state certified. But I think within that, we should be looking at a model that requires recertification, right? Almost like a license to practice, right? If it's a profession, then you should have professional licensure. And I think there's some assets that just totally get unused. You know, we've got a state full of community colleges, and yet we have to centralize the training academy in one place in the middle, maybe the middle of Oregon, for 16 weeks. And then some people in those agencies aren't ever coming back there, right? And in the state of Oregon, you can get hired and be a public safety officer, and you just have to attend within the first year of hire. Interesting, isn't it? Right? Get a gun, you get a badge, you get a fast car.
And that's it.
And that's it. You just have to attend within the first year of hire. So I think there's ways to adjust. And then, you know, the hiring standards. You know, it used to be Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, you had to have a 4-year degree. It used to be with Portland Police Bureau, you had to have a 4-year degree. Then it went down to a 2-year degray. Now it's like high school and any relevant experience, you know, or a combination of military relevant experience and a high school diploma, or GED. And I think the expert opinion is still out on that, what makes a well-educated person. Right? Someone that legitimately can come do this job. I don't know, you know. Age of 21 is the age that you can be hired. Is that too low of an age? I mean, modern brain science says that your frontal lobe isn't finished developing until
not be wrapped yet. You might still need a couple more years of seasoning.
Yeah, 28, 29 years of age, you know, so at 21, is that who we want doing the job? You know?
Yeah, and that would speak to me, too, to think about, like, is there some sort of step role between, right, where we can get you, maybe you can get that community seasoning and relationships.
Yes.
And even that intervention, you know, showing up on the scene, being present stuff.
Yes.
Before.
Yes.
You get a fast car and a gun.
Yes.
and
yes.
And
that sounds a little bit disingenuous, but you know, I think currently most of the hiring classes at the city, the educational experience is extremely large for most of the new hires. At least master's degree, some with doctorates. Does that help? Probably. Should it be a must? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I don't know. I mean, one of the better people that I ever worked with was a person that they were a jet airline engine mechanic. And at about 35 years of age said, you know, I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to go do this. great officer.
Yeah.
But it really depends on the will, I think, of the people and their electeds. Some people believe there should be a superintendent of public safety rather than a chief and then a commissioner that you direct report to, right? And just let the chief be basically the manager of the bureau. But the superintendent is the CEO. They are the person almost with as much ability as an elected commissioner. So there's a lot of thought on that. There's a lot of thought that no one should be a chief unless they have a law degree and maybe an MBA or maybe both, as opposed to running off to the FBI Academy or the Naval War College or some of the certificate programs that are offered that seemingly qualify you to be a chief.
We'll have to explore that. And so the last pillar, the final pillar, is officer safety and well-being. And what do you think is just the really salient point that folks need to understand, like, about the importance of that pillar?
Well, first, we missed Pillar 4, which is community policing and crime reduction, yes, but we can come back to that. I think officer wellness and safety are imperative, right? Imperative. So not othering anyone, not pointing anyone out, but think of it like this. And I heard a Portland Police Bureau Sergeant Israel Hill say this today, that the wellness and safety is number one on his list, because if you're not well and in a good mindset, you can't possibly show up and do the job that day, right? If you're not centered, your interaction more than likely is going to go terrible and could result in some circumstances that could be extremely tragic. There are other people that they adhere to the military model, and that you should have officers that have a fitness metric to meet quarterly or yearly. If you can't get out of the car and do your job, which may consist of running 2 or 3 blocks and hopping a fence to save someone's life, maybe you're not able to do the job, right? And just for, I think, self-improvement, right? So it doesn't have to be like boot camp, but there should be some standard. Currently, because of labor contracts and so forth, those standards are always considered a point of bargaining, and so there's got to be some type of incentive or monetary push for people to want to participate, rather than it just being, hey, this is a rule. This is the way it is. And it's good for you, and it's good for the community we serve. I think the jury's still out. However, there are other areas of wellness, the whole mindfulness, the, dietary issues, the, having an outlet that does not include going to party with the people you just worked a shift with, being clicked into your family, and remembering who you were before you took the job and took the oath, and, because there is an intensity to it that it will change your personality and your relationship with a lot of people and a lot of different things. You know, I will say this though, you know, because again, you know, when it comes to criticism, sometimes public safety has the thinnest skin, right? And in the corporate world, it's a little different. But if you're really of service, you know, you don't personalize what is being said about the profession. You personalize your efforts to make the profession better. You know, that's my belief. And so there are those that say, how dare you? How dare you criticize? Oh, I heard you say this about the mayor or the chief. And I was like, listen, I am a citizen just like you are, right? And you feel strong enough to say things about anybody that says anything about the profession or the people that have the responsibility and the burden of leading the profession. Well, I have the same right. And I think it directly impacts me a little bit more than you.
Absolutely. And I think actually what you said there actually kind of sets us up well to cover that last pillar of community policing and crime reduction, because there's the thing I think folks, I ask people to understand is that as a person that's in law enforcement, we have given you, we have agreed that you have the authority to go to the ultimate level of human interaction.
Yes.
If something's happening.
Yes. I can stop you, detain you, arrest you, take your possessions, put you in confinement, and pass you off to a district attorney who issues charges, and then you have to go in front of a judge and ultimately a jury of your peers, or a grand jury hears the evidence, and you're in the mix.
And so I need to be able to critique what you're doing.
Yes.
Because that's all I have.
Yes.
To know, like, to get to that trust and legitimacy.
Right, because you're talking about the powerful and the powerless, right? And power transferred by oath does not mean that you are without fault or that you should be without question, right? I mean, the history of the Portland Police Bureau, before I came on, there was a group of officers referred to as the Dirty 30, you know, and then after that, of course, we had several tragedies in the community, and then we had the possum throwing incident. We had the Don't Choke 'em, Smoke 'em T-shirts. You know, there have been union marches where the rank and file of the PPA have marched. We had a black commissioner relieved of his duties of being the commissioner of police. We're talking about Charles Jordan. And so on and so forth, right? And so when people say, oh, why can't you just let go of it? It's like, because it keeps happening. It keeps happening, right? Nationally and locally. And to have the audacity to say we will not be questioned, it's just fundamentally wrong. So, community policing, if, as I think it's Sir Robert Peel said, the people are the police are the people. So, that's number one. Number two is you do have two communities. You've got one of interest, generally, and then you've got the geographic community. And you must service both, right? And that service and involvement includes everything from creation of policy to satisfying the basic needs of all humans, recognition, right? And helping to solve problems together, right? If, when I get done with my shift, and truly I do not mean this as an affront to anyone who may live in Ridgefield, but I jump into my truck and I boogie on to Ridgefield, and I don't have to be in the community I'm working because I'm on a 410, right? So I got 3 days off, right? There's something that becomes unbalanced about that, right? Because you're not living, tasting, breathing, smelling life outside of interrupting life, and then most times there's some of the most intense experiences you're ever going to have, right? So you got to involve community in a way that takes in, mentors, actually almost even adopts their officers, right? I mean, I thought the neighborhood liaison officer program was great, and I think that the former iterations of having neighborhood associations that were active, I think that those are very good assets. And I think being open and transparent, right? Using technology. Hey, when the precincts open up, there should be a kiosk in every precinct where a citizen can come in and look up all types of information, crime statistics in the neighborhood, who their neighborhood officer is, when the next meeting is, how many officers were deployed on any given shift, what was the incident last night. All of that, right, should be available to the public and to the officers in a usable way, so we can talk mutually about problems that can be solved, right? And I saw community policing at its most robust here in the city of Portland, and I also experienced it at its poorest because just as I spoke about soft skills versus hard skills, most of the people-oriented, community-oriented pieces of the Bureau seem to always become defunded when there's a budget crisis. So, considering the call for reprogramming money, I think that work is given to the community and that the police are collaborators, right? Rather than the police, as has been said, colonizing a community and telling them, it's old missionary style. Hey, read this book, and what's in this book is good for you.
These are the rules.
These are the rules, and we'll take care of you if you abide by this book. Well, maybe it should be the other way around. Community safety, public safety, neighborhood responsibility, all those things are important. I really believe that. I think many times we try to complicate issues that might not need another round table. How about just put the chairs back at the table you had, right? How about, yes, you can reform neighborhood associations, but don't destroy them, right? I mean, don't just throw out things that say, oh, well, they were, inhabited by old silver-haired white folks that dictated how the police treated people in the community. Yeah, there might have been some of that, but my experience says that, people who invested themselves in those processes and those activities weren't just old silver-haired white people. They're people that, I got a house. I don't like them people slinging that dope on my street corner because, it brings disorder, and those are the things I think that if you encourage the opportunity for working together, and it's not a panacea, right, then you get there. But you also don't just build your nest on it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you've had the professional era of policing, you've had the reform era of policing, you've had the technological era of policing and the collaborative era, and then you've had problem-oriented policing as opposed to community-oriented policing. You've had broken windows theory. It's all of it, right? It's all of it. So that's what I think.
Word up. Well, I'm gonna do, because I mean, I got a wealth of other things we can talk about, but there's always what I like to call the future, to have a future conversation. So I want to get us out on music. Can I get a music question?
Yeah, you can ask me a question about music.
Okay. All right. So what would you need to get the energy? You need to get the blood pumping. You know what I'm saying? What are you turning on for? If I say right now, Modica, we got to get up. We got to ride to Seattle, man. We need to get our energy level up. What you gonna turn on to get us motivated, get us energized?
It's either gonna be the cut by Graham Central Station featuring Larry Graham, Hair, or Flashlight by Funkadelic. You can see that my mask is all the cover art from Parliament Funkadelic.
Can I take a picture of that there?
You can take a picture of this right here. Matter of fact, I even put it on.
Yeah.
And then you can cut us out with that Graham Central Station cut, because that's besides Glide, that's the toughest bass line ever. Glide by.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah,
yes, sir. You see that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna back it up so that people can.
May the funk be with you.
Absolutely. Whether the funk will be your guide or.
Oh yes.
You know what I mean? Because well, thank you, because I feel like music is a language.
Oh yeah.
And a feeling, and the beautiful thing about it is, you don't even always have to be around or from the time that music was the music.
That's right.
But if it's good music, you'd be like, ooh.
Oh, man.
I see why you like
there's
that.
There's so much music, right? I mean, I'm a P-Funk and go-go music enthusiast. I like it. But also I like people like Gary Bartz, saxophonist. Music is my sanctuary. I like Gato Barbieri, jazz saxophonist, Latino brother, I like Buddy Miles, Harvey Mason, Jack DeJohnette, music, it is as important as physical sustenance.
All right. Well, Chief, I thank you for sharing with me today, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're most very welcome. I tell you, Justice, we got to do it again. I got a group that I rock with, and we're retired. Most of us from the profession. We're African American, Latino, and indigenous, and we span all ranks. And so I think, if we do this again, man, we do the group thing.
I would love that. That'd be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining us, and peace.
Where's my music?
Oh, well, you're going to hear that on the, on the other side.
Oh, okay.
I don't have no keyboard. Thank you, Modica.
All right, brother.
Peace.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast with Justice Rajee. Thank you to my guest, Kevin Modica. This interview was recorded, as I like to say, live and in person, right on the stoop, and so that's why you got the nature, you got the random noises, the real life happening right there as it was going on. But really, really, I want to say again, thank you, Modica, for giving me time and giving me space and sharing your home, and allowing me to, just to take a little bit of your story and share it with the world. As always, the Ask Your Oldhead Podcast can be found anywhere you find podcasts for free. You can support the podcast by heading to Patreon and becoming a patron. You can also support the podcast by sharing, rating, and subscribing, and putting it on to somebody else to expand our audience. You can also support the podcast by heading to the Etsy shop, grabbing a t-shirt, arts and culture, which will be more work coming with that in any minute now. And generally, man, thank you. Be safe. This is a moment in our community, in our society, and we are going to get to the other side one way or the other. So do the best you can. Be your best self at all times, or most of the time. With that, I'm going to say peace.